Give me a chord of G with it, just G.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a lot of accidents with guitar players in clubs just lately. A few guitar players have been plugging in the wrong plugs and getting killed. Let's hope it happens tonight.
Thanks, pardon. Nine? Yeah.
Imagine a world without the guitar. I've never known such a time, but it felt like that once, in England, back in the 50s.
Magic moments when
Popular music was dominated by people like Perry Como and the Beverley Sisters. And the nation's song factory was a place called Denmark Street in London, known as Tin Pan Alley.
Birthplace of melodies which have kept Britain singing in good times and in bad. Just 60 yards of plate glass windows, behind which 1 million new songs have been heard.
they only told me we were.
It was all very cosy and respectable until
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock.
along came Bill Hailey and his guitar.
Rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock, we're gonna rock. Around the clock tonight.
This baby-faced marionette with a kiss curl was a bit of a joke, but he shook things up.
Hey, sister, what do you call that exercise you get?
It's rock and roll, brother, and we're rocking tonight.
When Rock Around the Clock hit the cinemas, the kids went wild and trashed the place. Seats were torn up, and Rebellion had a whole new sound. And Elvis was something else. In his hands, the guitar was so much more than a mere instrument. The king was sexy, and by association, so was the guitar. And at home, there was this, the sound of the oud, an ancient ancestor of the guitar, a kind of Arabian lute played by friends of my father long into the night. Two instruments, clearly linked, but worlds apart. It was all very mysterious. The guitar now dominates the soundtrack of our lives. And look at Denmark Street today. It's nothing but guitar shops, each one an Aladdin's cave of instruments, catering to every musical taste, prompting for the uninitiated the question, who could possibly need so many? What is the magic of a guitar? What makes it so special? Why do people love it so? And how did it come to rule the world?
What else would you play if you were going to play an instrument if you were, 11 years old as I was in 1958? It would obviously be the guitar. And the guitar was the one that was the trendy one. The guitar was the one that was... It just seemed to me to be at the centre of the universe. When I was about 16, I got into a fight, the first ever fight that I'd ever won. And the guy was so upset with me winning this fight is that he claimed that I'd hit him with a brick. He got everybody in the school to send me to Coventry. It was a horrifyingly miserable time, and I shut myself away with the guitar. There's a vengefulness about this, When I come out with this guitar, you're going to fucking wish you didn't fuck with me.
You're more like a warrior going into battle with your battle axe. Whereas a piano is, you're just a piano man.
Suddenly, at the end of the 50s, Britain got the guitar bug. The piano was dead, and there was a new kid on the block.
Laurie, come along.
civilized man has always craved some sweet-sounding instrument so that he might make music and be glad.
Back then, the guitar was new. It was cool. It was portable. And some even had knobs on.
Today, his fancy turns more and more to something he can hang easily around his neck.
If I'm honest, I'm a middle-aged man who barely knows how to hold a guitar, so it's probably too late to learn. But there is someone who might be able to teach me. After all, he taught everybody else.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to begin my show by playing for you a tune that is over 1,000 years old. There's nothing like being up to date, is there? Are you ready? Let's go!
A man called Bert Weedon wrote the best-selling guitar tutor ever. His guide to modern guitar playing made the remarkable promise that you could learn to play in a day.
That's the original book, of course, but then ever since then I've had to have different pictures, same book, different pictures as the time went by. Plan a day, plan a day. That was 1957 to 1987, and that's the latest one.
Still at it, then?
Still at it. They're still selling, yeah.
And what do you think of those people who followed you?
Well, lots
the
of
Beatles,
the Beatles,
Eric Clapton,
Brian May, John Lennon, Paul McCartney. They all learnt from the Bert Weedon book, but I didn't teach them the way to play. They had their own styles, but the guitar, everybody loved the guitar.
Are you ready for some good old rock and roll?
Bert proved that in May 1959, when he had the UK's first ever guitar instrumental top 10 hit with Guitar Boogie Shuffle. What is it then about the guitar, Bert, that makes it something which has got such popular appeal? Even if you can't play it well, people want to have one and play it, don't they?
I don't know, it's got a symbol that it's a sexual thing, but it's also got a thing that it's a beautiful thing. It's got a thing of emotion. It's like a beautiful woman. You can cuddle it. I just don't know what it is about the guitar, but it is, to my mind, the loveliest instrument of all. The violin's great, the harp's great, the cello's great. I love all those instruments. But the guitar is number one with me.
A feeling shared with many a spotty oik and freshly scrubbed mummy's boy in the 50s. The new teenage consumer was ready to embark on a musical journey. It might last a lifetime or only a few weeks, but he'll get that all-important first guitar.
My first guitar was, my grandmother bought it for me. She got it from an Italian restaurant. It was on the wall, and the guy replaced it with Chianti bottles.
My first guitar was a tennis racket. No, actually, my first guitar was a Beatles ukulele, one of these little pink ukuleles with John, Paul, George, and Ringo's faces on it.
To have a guitar. I remember telling my dad, I think I was holding his hand, had a picture of Elvis Presley on the head. I think it was made of plastic. I want that.
First guitar I ever played was my brother's one, which is too heavy. It was kind of a copy of a Fender Stratocaster, and I sort of hacksawed off the edges to make it a smaller size that could fit with me.
This is my Dove, and I hadn't even really noticed that I was wearing this hole. But I mean, Willie Nelson's got a massive hole in his guitar, and it doesn't make it sound bad.
It's akin, I think, to like a motorbike or a gun to a kid. And for me, it was this fascinating, mysterious, totally captivating item.
First guitar I got was would have been about 4 or 5. There was a shop down the road from where I lived which sold brooms and buckets and mops and stuff like that, and it had this little guitar in the window, which apparently, you know, I was absolutely obsessed with getting this thing. I mean, my mother tells me that on a Saturday morning she would take me down to this department store where she'd do her shopping. I mean, the times being what they were, you could do this, and she'd take me to where the guitars and amps were, and then she'd nip off and do her shopping and leave me there and know that I'd be all right, because I wouldn't move. I'd just be kind of in this, you know, kind of fantasy land, really.
Do you remember your first guitar, getting your first guitar?
Yes, indeed. My first guitar came from a street market called Petticoat Lane, and I used to go down there every Sunday morning and sort of touch the guitar, and the man would say, "Clear off out of it." And eventually I saved up 15 shillings, which is, of course, 75p in today's money. And I walked up and he was just about telling me to clear off, and I said, "I'll have that guitar, please, because I always wanted it." And he said, "Oh, here you are then, son." And he gave it to me and he put it in 2 big paper bags. So I was so proud of it. And as I was walking down the street in East Ham, people would say to me, "What have you got there, son?" And I said, "It's a guitar." And they said, "What's a guitar?" They didn't know.
It's extraordinary to think that back in the 30s, when Bert got his first guitar, it simply didn't figure in the popular imagination. This was the first sound recording of a guitar on film, from sometime in the 1920s. So where did it all begin? I was surprised to discover that the instrument in the form we know today, with its seductive hourglass figure, has only been around a couple of 100 years.
Technically, it belongs to the family of instruments known as chordophones,
which produce sound by the vibration of strings between 2 fixed points.
and it goes back a long, long way.
Nearly 3,400 years old and located in modern-day Turkey, this Hittite carving shows a man playing a guitar-like object with a long, fretted neck. According to the great classical guitarist Andres Segovia, the guitar's origins can be traced all the way back to Greek legend and the first love of the god Apollo. It is, after all, an instrument of desire. The story goes that Apollo, struck by a magical arrow from Eros, the god of love, is overcome by passion for a young nymph, Daphne. Thanks to another of Eros' arrows, which has the opposite effect, Daphne has other ideas and flees from the son of Zeus. As he closes in upon her, she cries out to her father, the river god, to save her or transform her. And before the eyes of the astonished Apollo, she is transformed into a laurel tree. The god declares the tree to be sacred and vows to use its wood to make his lyre, the precursor of the first guitar. Apart from this saga of attempted rape, the Greeks had a distressing habit of using almost any hollow object to act as a resonating chamber in their string instruments. Yes, I'm sorry to say, even him. As well as the toll it took on tortoises and turtles, Aristotle had his doubts about the moral value of the lyre in the education of youth. The guitar has always had a bit of a bad reputation.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Crying all the time. Well, you ain't never put a limit and you ain't no friend of mine.
If he can do it, I can do it too.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Crying all the time.
It is, of course, by no means essential to be a hound dog. A rock and roll guitarist can be turned out in 12 hours flat. The classical player must devote at least 12 solid years to patient study. You pays your money and you takes your pick.
In 1959, John Williams was one of the finest young players of a classical guitar, riding the crest of a wave of interest in the instrument.
The classical guitar is a wonder. Of course, you don't have anything like the number of notes or the means to play them that you have on the harpsichord or the piano. You don't have the sustain of stringed instruments with the bow. But the uniqueness of the guitar is that it combines little elements of all that. It is a fantastic instrument.
Today, after a lifetime playing, he's more ready than ever to look back to the instrument's humble beginnings.
The guitar, back in the 14th, 15th century, was originally a popular instrument with 4 strings. It was used for strumming and accompanying dances, popular dances, country dances, and songs. It didn't have what we call the polyphonic technique of playing with the fingers like this, where you could play, you know, Bach fugues. With different voices, arpeggios. If you see the right hand, the old guitar, the original popular guitar, didn't have that. It was used for strumming. Single notes were played exactly like with a pick. Like that. And strumming, or even playing. Everything was strummed. That's the origins of the guitar.
But though the guitar has evolved over the centuries, there's no one clear thread of development, and there are plenty of evolutionary dead ends. You can find this strange creature called a gittern in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. It makes an appearance in The Miller's Tale of young Absalom wooing the carpenter's wife Alison, as told to the assembled pilgrims, including, of course, the publican, one Harry Bailey. No relation.
And he tries to sort of seduce this lady with this instrument.
Called the gittern.
Yes, a gittern.
Gittern, yes.
Is that what it's?
Yes.
The cittern or the gittern?
Well, there's the cittern and there's the gittern.
Right. And the bittern, of course.
And the bittern, yes.
Which is as
well as could he play on a gittern. In all the tune has brewhouse ne tavern.
Yes.
That he ne visited with his solas, that any Gaylard tapister was. Would you know what a Gaylard tapister is?
A Gaylard. Would that be sort of a kind of a barmaid? Would it?
Correct, yes. That is right. A lively barmaid.
Right, a saucy barmaid.
A saucy barmaid,
A 70s sitcom barmaid.
Well, this is sort of more like the 14th century.
1470s,
sort of,
yeah.
1470s. So far as I know, he went to the barber's to get a cittern.
Oh, didn't they used to sort of have them around just kind of for general usage? Like you could pick one up and strum one while you were getting a haircut or something. They were like the equivalent of magazines in the dental waiting room.
Absolutely. And by Shakespeare's day, cittern head was a well-known term of abuse, and the cittern itself a feature of any self-respecting barbershop. Because by now the association of the instrument and the female body was pretty well established, and the cittern was available for every man to play upon, it soon became synonymous with, shall we say, women of easy virtue.
Loose women were referred to as gitterns.
All right, or what would be slatterns? Or
Slatterns and gitterns.
All right.
She is but a gittern. Any man may play upon her.
You see, that's harsh.
It is quite interesting, isn't it, that the guitar as the body of a woman. I mean, your one is...
It's a strange-looking woman. Yeah, there you are. You see? There's a slight suggestion of promiscuity.
To see the cittern in action, I'd been given an address in Plumstead, deep into the Thames Delta, the home of someone called Michael Tyack.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh,
hello. You are Michael.
That's right.
I'm Alan.
Hello, Alan.
I've come to see your cittern.
All right, please do come in. Careful with the bongos. Down here. Please.
Tyak is founder of the medieval folk band Circulus.
I said mind the bongo.
I did mind the bongo.
He contrives to live in the world today as if it's both 1972 and 1272.
And this is Kate.
Hello, Kate. Who's Kate?
Kate is... Are you my girlfriend, Kate?
Yes.
Yes.
She is your girlfriend?
Yeah.
He also has a weird and wonderful collection of instruments. He showed me the Turkish saz, the lute, the Spanish vihuela, and here at last was the elusive cittern.
There we are, and it's all been carved out of one piece of wood, a bit like a canoe, which makes the sound resonate a little more thoroughly.
Really? Is that out of one piece of wood?
And then a soundboard is added, and the rose.
And this cittern, is this related to the gittern?
That's right. The gittern is a gut-strung instrument that was popular in the Middle Ages, and this kind of wire-strung cittern was very popular in the Elizabethan period.
There's a lot of sound comes out of that little instrument, doesn't it?
It carries very well, yes, especially outdoors. There's like the lute doesn't carry at all outdoors, and so the cittern's kind of ideal for being a wandering minstrel.
If you want to find a wandering minstrel outside the Thames Delta, you can, in Spain. These roving bands of musicians playing stringed instruments are called tunas. It may look like a stunt for tourists, but as their 12th century costumes suggest, they have a direct link to the tradition of the medieval troubadours, men who live by their wits and their music, and they take the night's business very seriously. That business is, of course, seduction. Scenes like this are at the heart of the guitar's story. The serenade runs deep in the instrument's DNA, no matter where you are.
There's a stream beside the cabin in the valley of my dreams, and there's love light shining round the cabin door.
Don't come up here.
A summer's day, an English park.
As an instrument of seduction, the guitar has travelled the world.
This is Miss Dundas, a great-granddaughter of Lord Napier, educated at Cheltenham Ladies' College.
The first girlfriend I wasn't really interested at all in my guitar playing or anything like that. She just thought it was all a bit embarrassing and didn't really... But the girlfriend I'm with now, she's Italian and she loves a little serenade, I must admit, to the point where I'm embarrassed to do it, but she keeps asking me to sing her songs and play stuff to her, and I'm kind of like, oh God, that's a bit cheesy, isn't it? You know what I mean? But she's Italian, so it's kind of they kind of love all that, so I'm kind of finding myself singing songs at home more often, and it's very good at the end of a big fight, to sort of just come with the guitar and play a little track.
My love for you will still carry on. We're going on a picnic, it's a beautiful day. We'll look for a place where the sun meets the shade. We're going on a picnic, oh what a great day, to dance with the scarecrow and pull out his pay.
Have I used the guitar to get laid?
Yeah.
Not directly. I never stood outside a woman's window with my guitar and serenaded them in the hopes of getting lucky. But certainly there's an aspect, that's what brings you to the instrument, because there's something glorious about someone playing it.
But I hadn't just come to Cordoba for the serenades. Back in the 9th century, this was the capital of the Spanish territory, conquered by the Moors from the Middle East and North Africa, who brought with them that distinguished ancestor of the guitar, so familiar from my own childhood, the oud. Legend has it that Abu Hazza ibn Nafi, better known as Ziryab, fled Baghdad and settled here in 822. He's credited with adding a 5th bass string to the oud and setting up the first music conservatory in the world. The Moors were driven from Spain in 1492, but they left behind a glorious legacy of this golden age. Though their architecture remains, their musical influence spread far and wide. In particular, the oud's cousin, the lute, went on to become the instrument of choice in the royal courts of medieval and Renaissance Europe. Henry VIII owned 26 of them, and his daughter Elizabeth also played. And when it was good, it was very, very good. According to some scholars, its music was a bridge between the material and celestial worlds, as far away from the street instrument, the guitar, as you could get. But its days were numbered. Because of its many gut strings, it was expensive to maintain and notoriously difficult to tune.
You can lose your mind trying to tune a lute. I'm sure it drove a lot of people around the bend, and you could spend as much time tuning it as you did playing it. It's a tricky instrument because you have to have total silence when you play it to people, really, and there's so little total silence around nowadays.
And here's the hero in our story. The man who did more than any other to end the lute's dominance of courtly music, Charles II. When the king returned from exile in Europe, he brought his guitar with him across the channel. And the man responsible for transporting it from Dover to London was none other than the diarist Samuel Pepys, a lute man himself, who found it a most frustrating task.
8th of June, 1660. Out early. Took horses at Deal. I troubled much with the king's guitar, and Fairbrother, the rogue that I entrusted with the carrying of it on foot, whom I thought I had lost.
The instrument in question was what we call a baroque guitar. It had 5 pairs of strings and was often exquisitely detailed. Pepys, however, was not impressed. Even when he heard the king's guitar tutor, the Italian Francisco Corbetta, he grumbled.
He played most admirably, so well that I was mightily troubled that all that pain should have been taken upon so bad an instrument.
But the ladies of the court were spellbound. Another writer noted, "You were as sure to see a guitar on a lady's toilette as rouge or patches. God knows what a universal strumming there was." From the 18th century onwards, the guitar has been a fashion victim, falling in and out of favour as musical vogues come and go. It's had many fair-weather friends and not a few enemies. One of the most implacable was a harpsichord maker called Jacob Kirkman, whose business was threatened when the fashionable ladies of London began abandoning their keyboards in favour of the wire-strung English guitar. Facing financial ruin, Kirkman, a shrewd businessman, had to move quickly to win back his upmarket clients. Taking inspiration from an unlikely source, the harpsichord maker devised a cunning plan. He bought up cheap English guitars and presented them to local working girls. And the less than savoury street balladeers also got the Kirkman treatment. After a little tutoring in the basic chords, Kirkman was able to step back and watch his plan unfold. The ladies of fashion took the bait. They were so horrified to see the lower orders playing the guitar, they ditched their own instruments and returned to the waiting clutches of Kirkman and his harpsichords. The battle between guitar and keyboard would rage for the next 2 centuries. But if you couldn't make up your mind, there was a compromise. The pianoforte guitar, circa 1790. So if you were too lazy to learn the guitar, there was always this option. Enthusiasm for the guitar reached its zenith in Europe in the early 19th century, when the instrument took the salons of Paris by storm. Mods versus rockers had nothing on the battles between followers of the guitar virtuosi of the day. They called it guitar mania. And it was a Neapolitan, Mauro Giuliani, who inspired the first ever guitar fanzine. Published in London, it was titled The Giulianiad. The guitar hero was born. But the guitar has always been most at home in Spain, where it is woven into the texture of everyday life. For many, flamenco represents the sound and soul of exotic Spain. It's a music of the people, and its roots go deep into the history of Andalusia, mixing Islamic, Sephardic Jewish, and Gypsy cultures. I've come to see a man who's helped bring this passionate music to an international audience, the great Paco Pena. He remembers vividly the moment that the sound of the flamenco guitar captured his imagination.
I saw a guy, a young chap, carrying the guitar in his hand, and he was playing this. So strongly, because it's a very important flamenco form, it's soleares. And I remember just that falsetto, that little piece, it just grabbed me.
Can you show me, display for me, for instance, the rasguedo?
Yeah.
Explain to me what the basic ingredients are then of the flamenco in terms of the differences that you would...
Yes, rasgado really means, it means strumming the strings. It's not kind, it's like hitting the strings. Flamenco is very expressive, very emotional, of course. Particularly the songs, and the guitar does the same thing with the notes. It is very rhythmical. It has very sharp rhythms and at times very complex. It's not as though you're creating out of nothing. Mostly it is the guitar that begins to create an atmosphere, and then the singer, sort of sings to really to inspire everybody. So then the dancers start and sort of develop the dance. But there is a moment when the dancers really show off footwork, and that is called escobilla. And this is what we were rehearsing. The feet and the guitar.
One of the greatest ever virtuosi, Andres Segovia, claimed that he was rescuing the guitar from the hands of the noisy flamenco players. As his protégé, John Williams, points out, he fought for the status and repertoire that the guitar had always lacked.
Segovia created the sort of 20th century being of the guitar as a concert instrument. His technique, he played with the nails. Previously to that, guitarists had never really, they played with the nails and with the flesh, but they'd never really developed a very clear sound that could be projected in public. And his technique,
nail helped that.
The nail helped that, and he was so strong at doing it.
You've got quite a small hand, haven't you?
I think it's quite. The stretch is quite good. It's quite flexible, but it's not big.
What do you need to be what physical attributes do you need?
The most important thing for classical players, which can be quite a problem, is the nails of the right hand, because we actually play with the nails, and it's the angle of the nail and the position on the string that gives the different colour. Even without changing the position on the string, I can make either a sound like this, and if I turn the angle round so I'm more flat onto the string, and I just turn it round a little bit, and you find that, what becomes very instinctive after a while is that while you're playing, unconsciously, depending on how you're feeling, you're changing those positions all the time. The concentration on the quality of sound and the variety of sound is to do with the classical guitar as opposed to popular guitar. His personality was magnificent. He had a grandeur and a sort of magic about just seeing that chap down on the stage there, and everyone's absolutely hypnotised to hear these magical sounds coming. So that's what he did for the guitar.
Thanks largely to Segovia, classical guitar is now established all over the world, even in China, where it faced opposition during the Cultural Revolution. And the first person ever to study guitar at the Beijing Conservatoire was a young woman, Shui Fei Yang.
During Cultural Revolution, guitar was regarded as a hooligan instrument. And so some people, they love guitar. They had to, they dare not to tell people that they play guitar at their home. So you can imagine it was very difficult for the instrument in China. Think about it, only guitar, when you play it, you need to use your whole body to hold it. So that makes it very intimate. So somehow you feel like you're making music with your partner. So, and in another way, it was very strange. I was from a normal family. My parents are teachers, and they put their little daughter to learn guitar, which was regarded as a street instrument in China, not a very high class.
This not very high-class instrument arrived in America with the very first settlers. It was brought by the all-conquering Spanish missionaries and soldiers. There are records of guitar strings for sale on the Santa Fe Trail from Mexico 2 decades before the Pilgrims landed in 1620. One thing's for sure, it has flourished here as nowhere else on earth, going from strength to strength until it became a true American icon. As soon as the mass-produced guitar was available by mail order throughout the country, America was hooked. After the abolition of slavery, the guitar was the perfect accompaniment to the voice of the people, carried everywhere in this vast land.
Long-distance information, give me Memphis, Tennessee.
And where else to start but the American South?
It's amazing to think, but so much of the music that we listen to today, country, blues, soul, rock and roll, comes from here in the Mississippi Delta, the most neglected and impoverished part of America. And it was thanks to the guitar, the instrument of the dispossessed, that it was all made possible.
While I quit my job down at the car wash, I left my mama a goodbye note. By sundown, I left Kingston with my guitar under my coat.
And remember, the king of rock and roll himself came from a poor country background. A southerner to his core, Elvis wanted a gun for his 11th birthday, but his mother Gladys bought him a cheap guitar instead. Now, for around $10,000, you can buy a reissue of his Martin guitar from 1956, complete with hand-tooled leather sheath, which Elvis himself devised to protect the back of his guitar from his gyrating belt buckle. Nowadays, big business has taken over. Visiting America today, the guitar is everywhere. Nashville, the home of country music, sells itself as Music City, USA. In fact, there are probably more guitars than people here, and some of the most notorious music shops in the world.
I showed them what a band would sound like. I was a swinging little guitar man. Show them, son.
And in this strange guitar jungle, there is only one king. George Groon is the most influential guitar dealer in America. He also clearly loves reptiles.
I had been collecting snakes since I was 8 years old, but I found that my background in zoology really suited quite well a crossover to guitars. One time there's a guy had a 1926 Martin 0018 on the bulletin board at school, and my interest in herpetology worked really well. He traded for $50 plus an 8-foot boa constrictor with cage. And you know, I had the snake, he had the guitar, I had the extra $50. It worked.
But the truth is, there's nobody better qualified to describe the evolution of the guitar in America than George.
This is one of the earliest guitars made in New York City, one of the earliest made in the United States. This is a Martin made by C.F. Martin Sr. in New York in the mid-1830s. The guitar has an ivory fingerboard, ivory bridge, ivory body bindings, fancy herringbone wood trim. This was an expensive presentation-grade instrument in its day.
Martin was an immigrant from Germany, but it didn't take long for his company to adapt to their new home.
They altered their designs to issue a true American guitar, and it looked like this.
Thanks to the instrument's portability, the guitar went everywhere in America. It was found in the log cabins of miners and prospectors. It went west with the settlers, where it was at home in parlors and on porches, barn dances and glee clubs. It was even on the front line of the Indian Wars. When the settlers of Meeker, Colorado, took a stand against the Ute Indians, there, among the women and children, waiting for troop reinforcements, we find the guitar. But it was still evolving. As musical tastes changed, people wanted bigger and louder guitars, which would project more. Martin issued this monster called the Dreadnought, named after the biggest battleship of the day.
That's a tune from the Carter family. They were popular 1927, right up through World War II. Actually one of the biggest selling country music acts of the day.
The Carter family were the first vocal group to become country music stars. They founded a musical dynasty. Their songs run deep in the bloodstream of American folk and country, and their sound was driven by Maybell's guitar.
This is a 1928 Gibson L5. It happens to be just like Maybell's. We even had the honor not long ago of selling her guitar, and it brought a record price for us, $575,000. But the value of that guitar was primarily that it is, in my opinion, the single most influential guitar in the entire history of country music. She pioneered the use of guitar as a lead instrument in country music.
This is Carter country, the mountains and valleys of southwestern Virginia. Back in 1927, when the Carter family began recording and broadcasting, the guitar was a relative newcomer, gradually replacing the old-time fiddle and banjo. But now, its sound seems almost part of the landscape. The man playing is Wayne Henderson, champion bluegrass picker and guitar maker, who can really make a piece of wood sing. His guitars have a kind of cult status. One sold at a recent auction for the record price of $325,000, and he made Eric Clapton wait 10 years for his.
This is a guitar that I just finished. It's a brand new guitar that I've just put, just got strings on it, and it's of course it's got some dust from my shop, but it's made out of, a beautiful set of Brazilian rosewood and mahogany neck and spruce that grew right up on this mountain right up here.
In his modest way, out of this modest workshop, Wayne produces guitars that are as valuable as gems and which ring like a bell.
Those things originally were for making spokes and wagon wheels. They call them a spoke shave, which they would be about this long, that you could get with both hands. The little miniature spoke shave does a really nice job making this little piece right in here.
We keep this locked up and hid because we don't want the whole world to know we got it.
As Don explains, some of the wood is so valuable, it's kept in a vault.
Rosewood that hadn't been exported out of Brazil since 1968 when the ban was put on it. And so you can imagine how hard this is to come by. And it's the holy grail of instrument music, and we're really proud that we've got any of it. And not only is it makes the best sound, I don't know how you'd find anything that had any more beauty than that.
Making a guitar is a delicate balancing act between strength and performance. Hard to believe in the laid-back atmosphere of Wayne's workshop. And when it comes to the bracing of a soundboard, Wayne, who worked for a while in George Grune's repair shop, has really learned from what made the old guitars tick.
I really like the old Martins, and they developed this brace pattern in thinking about the 1850s. And I've never heard anything I like the sound any better.
And you never know about the jailhouse blues till they put you behind the wall.
Nobody really knows how a guitar will turn out. It's at least as much art as science. And part of Wayne's art is in making it look so easy.
Then you gaze out at the stars. That's when you say, nobody knows.
He never advertises his craft. He doesn't have a website. He makes it look simple, but it isn't. Whittling is what Wayne does best. It gives each guitar its individual character and voice.
One of my favorite tools that I use almost more than anything else is as far as shaping and carving things, especially when it get into making necks. Right now, where there's braces are put on this full size, and I'm cutting these little dipped out places called voicing or scalloping braces, and that lets the whole top vibrate more, and it lowers the tone because it's like a speaker cone. It'll let it vibrate longer and slower, and it makes more, enhances the bass tone. People are always asking me about how you make guitar, and I tell them, well, you just take a good piece of wood like this and a good whittling knife, and you cut off everything that don't look like a guitar. And see, that stuff there, don't look like a guitar too much, Did you hear that tone happening? When you tap this, it makes vibrations happen on the inside in the air chamber. Is one thing that makes the instrument sound, and the air comes rushing out of there just from tapping here. Hopefully it'll blow out this match,
So how did this naturally intimate instrument, with its mysterious alchemy of strings, wood, and a box of air, become so ingrained in the American imagination? The answer was a new technology, a new medium, which changed the fortunes of a guitar forever.
Wish Cousin Whitey'd take us along. Me too. He's going to sing on the radio. Isn't that wonderful?
From the early 1920s onwards, radio broadened American horizons, helped a still young nation forge a sense of itself, and brought music into the living room, where the guitar was naturally at home.
Now here's that well-known and better-loved family of radio, the Carter family. And it looks like we're on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side.
The Carter family owed their popularity to sheer wattage. They broadcast from a radio station just over the border in Mexico, free of federal restrictions, which pumped out a signal that could be heard all over the country, as far north as Canada. By the late 20s and 30s, radio had created heroes, and the talkies put them on the screen.
It's Dean! Radio Ranch is on the air. This is Gene Autry offering another broadcast. Let's go! Now when I want my breeches pressed and want my clothes to look the best, I call on us.
Hollywood invented the singing cowboy, and Gene Autry was the very first superstar. Thanks to him, the guitar becomes so much more than a musical instrument. It becomes something you want because your hero has it.
That's not all, there's one more.
And to make things easier, Sears and Roebuck, America's most popular mail-order catalogue, who just happened to sponsor his radio show, started selling Gene Autry Roundup guitars for a mere $9.65.
You may think this is where the story ended.
Oh, and Gene Autry wasn't a cowboy at all, but a radio telegraph operator who was sacked for playing his guitar at work.
And they carry on the feud just like before.
But the guitar itself was on the up. And across the Atlantic in Paris, a musician with a very different sound and image was turning it into a lead instrument which would enthrall the world.
Listen to Django Reinhardt. It's the same melody, but what a difference in interpretation.
Born into poverty in 1910, Django started out playing the banjo. An illiterate gypsy, he became the first genius of the jazz guitar. And in partnership with Stéphane Grappelli in the quintet of the Hot Club of France, he found international fame. But he was lucky to be playing at all. One night in 1928, Django's caravan caught fire, and though he escaped with his life, his left hand was badly burned. Bedridden for 18 months, he retaught himself to play, using just 2 fingers. John Etheridge, who played with Grappelli later in his career, has analysed Django's style.
The finger business is very interesting because I thought he'd be sort of going like this, or something like that, but he doesn't. It's almost like it moves around like one thing. Like that. So, and Stefano Grappelli used to say, well, you know, he had an advantage because, you know, all the time there's that nanosecond of choice about which finger to use. So you're absolutely, once he'd got a handle on it, which of course I without practicing I can't get anywhere near, but once you get a handle on it, he's flying about like really free, you know. So you could say Django Reinhardt's style was amazing despite having lost the use of his fingers. Or you could say Django Reinhardt's style was amazing because of the loss of his fingers.
Django was a gypsy through and through, and relished the freedom his status as an outsider gave him.
Django was like a prince and was very, very conceited. The thing about not bothering to turn up for professional engagements and things comes from security, not from insecurity. It comes from, oh, I don't want to go. I can't be bothered, you know. I don't need it, you know. Whereas Steph would always, he's always there early, you know, ready to play. And so they were always falling out. Hello, where is he? He's never there. Listen, he was a genius. But so what? He was never there.
For many guitarists who came later, Django seemed to embody the spirit of the instrument.
He was my god. One day I got a phone call and they said, would you come and back Django Reinhardt with Stefan Grappelli? I said, would I? And so I went down there, and I can't speak French, and Django couldn't speak English. And we were sitting like we are on a settee, and he got a guitar and he went, brum, diddle-diddle-diddle-diddle-diddle. And I said, encore, encore. He went, brum, diddle-diddle-diddle-diddle-diddle. I'd never heard anything. I said, encore, encore, s'il vous plaît, encore. And he just got the guitar and sort of tossed it on a settee and moved over. And I thought, I'm actually playing with Django Reinhardt. And it was the most exciting day because he was the best guitarist ever.
But even Django was at the mercy of the limitations of the acoustic guitar. It needed more volume to be heard over the bands of the day. And next week, we'll see how it got him. When the guitar went electric,
everything changed.
It vibrates. It's warm when you hold it acoustically, and when it's electric, it's a little bit of a social problem.